also as I observe in other women, there is a catharsis in both the witnessing of someone's story and in the telling of a story. And I feel like that's medicine on its own merits. And so, but it's true. As you think about articulating something, giving something voice, gives it energy and launches it into the world and it takes on a life of its own and it makes it possible. Which is why, if you think about it, when people are even sick or when they're struggling with something mentally, the power of our words, I mean, sacred texts have said this forever. The power of our words can make or break us. It's like the tongue is like a rudder on a ship, and it moves an entire ship, one little rudder. That is the power of our tongue.
Welcome to the Too Curious MD podcast. I'm Dr. Ali Ahmed.
And I'm Dr. Soraya Rahman.
In this podcast, we are asking the unasked questions.
We're physicians applying the lens of narrative medicine, exploring integrative practices and psychedelic treatment in healthcare.
Together with our guests, we weave new learnings from stories, expertise, and the sciences. With the wisdom from holistic, alternative, and these conventional medicine, we are here to challenge the status quo.
We're curious about the connectivity and complexity between diverse fields of knowledge as they relate to consciousness, chronic illness, mental health, resilience, and beyond.
Learning more about the art and science of healing, or listening to stories of extraordinary healing. You're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Too Curious MDs podcast. My name is Dr. Soraya Rahman, and I'm here with Dr. Alia Ahmed, and we're the Too Curious MDs. Hi, and I'm going to give a little introduction about our podcast. Curiosity fuels discovery, and in medicine, it's the key to transformation. Too Curious MDs explores the frontiers of healing through narrative medicine, integrative therapies, psychedelics, and patient-centered care. Hosted by Dr. Alia Ahmed and Dr. Soraya Rahman, this podcast challenges the boundaries of traditional medicine, uncovering the untold stories, ethical dilemmas, and groundbreaking research shaping the future of healthcare. Join the journey because medicine is more than science. It's a story. All right. And today on our podcast, we have Dr. Jen Oliver, the real Jen Oliver. And I'm so delighted to meet you today and have you on the podcast. And I'll go ahead and just throw it out to you to give us your introduction because it's quite expansive and beautiful. So thank you so much for being here, Jen, today.
Thank you both for having me, and I wish I carried the illustrious title of doctor. So I'll just receive that spiritually, metaphorically, figuratively. But I am a speaker coach and a communications consultant, and I work primarily with women to help them speak with greater impact. I help my clients leverage their real story, their mission, and use embodiment to honestly exert a more powerful influence when they speak, whether it's behind closed doors or from a large stage. So a little bit about me, I coach people for TEDx talks, and I'm the executive producer and speaker coach for TEDx Folsom. I also have my own podcast. It's called Listen for Real, and I'm about to launch a second one with my mentor in this work, Casey Baker. And we also have a internationally recognized body of work called Women Speak, where we help women in the art and soul of public speaking. So all of my work is around helping women to find their truest voice, and whether it is to further their meaningful work, whether it's to further their advocacy, their activism, their mission, or their own relationships and their families and their community. I want them to speak with their truest voice so that they have greater impact and they feel good in their skin when they're doing it. So I'm really happy to be here.
And I am honored to have you here, Jen. I know you here in Folsom. You're an amazing advocate for so many things for women in business, and you've gotten a recent award in that field. You are a leader, and I see you as a healer as well. And so the title really goes well with you because you are a healer and you have done a lot of work with women in the healing spaces, but also healed them through a lot of the things that come up, right, with voice and with that projection of who they are, their identity. And I think that really, that empowerment that comes and has I've attended your workshops and have seen the evolution of what it has done for me in my awareness of myself and my voice, and where it's held and where it emerges from as well. And doing in a way, in the group, I think the work that you do really is so positively empowering. No, and sometimes I want that critic to come on. I'm always listening to my critic, and I want to say, well, what did I do wrong? In the workshops, nothing like that comes up. It's the power of the work really comes from the positive, safe space to kind of explore and really be playful, and without having to criticize ourselves. And I think that's kind of the lesson that I'm learning through the work with Women Speak, that positive things can be a way to heal, right? And this is where I would like to kind of just intro this idea of what I really speak to more so in the healing space of as a physician, is that we can heal the wellness in us, what's good in us. We don't have to pathologize our bodies and say we need to get rid of this, or we need to cut this out, or subjugate our symptoms so that they're not important. But what's even more important is listening in to what the message of that symptom is, but also acknowledging the organ system that is healthy and really empowering that part of the body, of the heart, right? The heart is responding, listening to the message that the heart is giving in terms of why it's beating this way and why is it tense and why does it become hypertensive, but really looking at the molecular positive things that the heart is doing already and empowering that system more than saying something's wrong with it. And I think that's kind of the idea of what I see comes even in Women Speak, in what we recognize in our society as women. Women can connect, women can recognize each other, see each other for who they are and the goodness of their role as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife, and really empowering that role even more. And it comes in many, many different versions, right? Women are multifaceted and multi-aware. So I really feel that see what you did to me, you already got me going on that empowering skill that you have really.
She has that effect on you. Well, it's lovely to have you, Jen, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what drew you to this work.
What drew me to this work was actually this notion that often the universe calls you to the very work you need. It's that classic, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I was called to the work I needed so desperately myself, because while I was very extroverted and very comfortable speaking from a stage and a microphone in front of hundreds or thousands, that mattered nothing to me. But if you looked at how I communicated in my relationships, I was not in a place where I could speak what was true. I was the classic people pleaser, or say what's palatable, say what will be pleasing, but what is not necessarily true or accurate. And as we all know, in the absence of good communication and good information, we then create a fiction in the minds of the people around us that's far worse than reality. And so I was called to this work. Yeah, called to it. And then to see other women and see the difference of a woman who is rooted in who she is and finds her truest voice, which I believe is in her body. I believe the body is the voice of spirit and soul, but the mind is the voice of ego and personality and culture and context and social media and our mother and our auntie and all the things, right? It's not necessarily our true voice. So you have all this noise and chatter. And if that is the constant chatter in your head, how do you get quiet enough to hear your truest voice and then ask for what you need or what you desire in this life? And I think that makes women very unhappy and very sick. And so I just felt really called to this work and saw the power of a woman when she feels liberated and good in her skin to speak what's true. My God, we would be leaving their wisdom, their understanding, their stories, their experiences on the table if they were not able to give those things voice. And I just know that's powerful. So that's why I feel called to it.
Well,
So powerful. And I know I was going to bring up, and the TEDx stage is the perfect platform for it. So I'm excited to hear about that part of it too and what you bring to it. But yeah, go ahead, Alia.
Well, and that's where I want to see more of you all on things like TEDx stages, because the ethos there is it's ideas worth spreading. It's the notion that you have knowledge, wisdom, research, ideas that the world needs to hear more about. And the good thing about TED is it's a platform that has incredible worldwide reach. So, yeah, go ahead, Alia. Sorry.
I would like to know a little bit more about. I know you talked. You're a storyteller. You believe in the idea of story, and really the sharing of story and what unfolds in story. There is a little bit of an alchemy of ideas. There's an alchemy of change, but first comes that pivotal point, right? If there is a pivotal point in your life that brought you to this place of where you are now, what would that point be for you? Where was that point in your life? Or was it several pivotal points that now looking back makes sense?
It's definitely, and this is where our relationship deepened, because I was going through a season of very profound depression. I was in a second marriage that I hastily entered because I was sorry to give, a divorce to my children. And I thought I must restore legacy for them. So I rushed into a marriage. I rushed into essentially more decisions like decades before, where I just checked the boxes, which led to some depression. In addition to menopausal, my hormones were shifting, and there was a change in my medication. There was like a trifecta of circumstances that triggered a pretty profound season of depression. And I was so desperate to feel better, as you've probably seen with so many clients. And I ended up actually at your office and availing myself of your work. And that was a really big turning point, because I didn't see a way out. So when you're, as a lot of people know, when you're depressed, your view is so myopic. It's so limited. And I felt like my perspective was broadened, and there was a sense of hope restored. Even though I had a ways to go and there was work to be done, it's as though a door opened and I saw, I can live a very different way, but I can't live the way I was before. And so it awakened me to the way I was living inauthentically. And I felt like the depression was actually a gift, and finding a way out of it was another gift. So I would say that was the shift in perspective. Is like little by little, there were stages and seasons in my life and changes, but the most profound change that has put me on the path I am now, which is so radically different, was definitely that season of depression. There's no question.
Well, we can definitely relate as women, checking the boxes, as you said. What I'm curious to know, what were those boxes that you were trying to check? Was this something that you kind of knew that you needed to do because that's culturally what as women we are told, that role that we have to kind of fulfill? We have a timeline and a body clock to accommodate at all times, and that's the checklist? Or what was that checklist for you?
My checklist was that I was living according to my roles. So being a wife, being a mother, being a person of faith who follows a spiritual practice, all of those can be beautiful things. The challenge with me was I wasn't necessarily, and I am grateful for all of those roles in my life. I have no regrets for my marriages, for the children I've had, none of that. I'm grateful for them. But what I think I was doing was I craved certainty. And so I found certainty in, if I check this box and do what's socially approved, for example, marry a man and make sure I stay married for the rest of my life, then that's socially approved. Check. If in my faith practice it informs that I see life this way, check. If as a mother this is the role I adhere to, check. And so I was never really even checking in with myself. I was simply filling boxes that I knew were going to be approved by everybody around me. It didn't even occur to me to take the time to ask what I felt about those things, or what I wanted, or how I was showing up. So I think at one point a therapist asked me if I knew who I was, and I answered, and all of my answers were my roles. I said, well, I'm a wife, I'm a mom. And he said, but who is Jen? Who is Jen in her soul? And I had no answer. I only knew me in my roles. Mm-hmm. And so when those roles change, whether you ask for them or not to change, many people don't ask for motherhood being stripped away or a marriage being taken away, etc. So then those roles are gone, and where's your identity? And I think that was at play there.
Wow. Wow. When you speak about approval and social approval and seeking that, how does that change for you when you weren't checking the boxes and not needing approval? Where does that now live for you, that direction or that impetus for what you want for yourself and your life now?
Yeah, that's been a really beautiful awakening. I remember when I told my second husband, who is a wonderful man, who I rushed into marriage very quickly because I thought I was restoring legacy, right? And I remember saying, I am so sorry. I made a mistake. And I thought this is where I belonged for the rest of my life, and I don't. When I could get honest, but before that, I was doing the song and the dance and the sugarcoating and the give him a safe place to land and don't really say what really is going on. Just, well, I don't know. And I just wish it was this. And there was never direct communication. When I did that, suddenly we were no longer dealing with a fiction. We were dealing with reality. I could give him the dignity of his response and show him that generosity and respect. I could be truthful. And I've seen ever since then, the friendship we have now, the rich things that have come as a result that I was so sure was going to ruin my children, ruin him, ruin the extended families. You think that if you tell the truth instead of just bearing it and go, well, I'll sacrifice myself for the many, that'll be okay. And I realized, no, this is the truer, better way, is what's honest. And now I have now seen, take that out 2.5 years since that conversation. And over, I am learning to say the truest thing, listen deeply to myself first, listen deeply to the divine within me, slow down, and then come with the truth. And everyone is better served. You think it's going to be so harmful, you're going to hurt someone in it. And I have just found over and over that it actually serves people because then they know what they're dealing with. They're dealing with the reality, not the fiction in their mind. And everyone is better for it. And we get closer and we connect and our relationships are better. So I would say that's the pivot for me.
Wow.
I love the framing of this as I'd like to jump in a little bit, like when you said that when, everybody is forced into a fiction, right? I just love that idea. And I just want to linger on that for a little bit because in kind of taking the time to kind of say, okay, I'm not going to support that fiction. What we're giving the other person the opportunity to do, which you did to your second husband, was to also drop his fiction.
Yes.
Like there's kind of like this like coming together moment of like, oh, we can deal with reality now. And reality then kind of opens up as into its richness instead of the kind of paucity of our projections, right? Reality is so much more juicy and vibrant and alive and honest, right? It's like, why would I want to put up that fiction? That fiction is boring. But there's even a little bit of just like, I love how you said that it was kind of like a big shutter kind of falling away. Almost like there's a lens, some kind of medium between you and reality. And as long as we can just kind of penetrate that and remember that actually we all have the ability to, when we speak truth, hold that for each other. And that dignifies the experience. We're dignifying that intersubjective experience. It's like, oh no, this is real. This is real. Like,
and I mean, it's true. And think about it as physicians, how often, think about it from this standpoint, if a patient is not giving you accurate information, they're trying to keep something from you, you are now suddenly going down a rabbit hole that has nothing to do with the potential diagnosis, if there's need, or course of action. And I'm sure you've dealt with it. So suddenly you're dealing with this fiction, all of this energy, time, wasted care that could be happening is being missed. So the analogy is the same because you simply aren't dealing with what's true. That's and right. If you just had the truth, you could go on a completely different course of action.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of this like work that we're all three doing is that every patient, and I think Alia, you agree with this, like every patient is this beautiful kind of fiction that they've written for themselves. It's beautiful. It's a life story, right? But sometimes we can see somewhere in that story that they're telling themselves where it's kind of not true or somewhere where the words are just really kind of dark. and they're kind
Well,
of criticizing themselves, you know? So you
I'm
can kind of
gonna
see the lie in the fiction.
I'm gonna highlight that point that you just made about the lingering, right? When you linger in this idea, something doesn't feel right about what I'm doing with myself, and you linger in it. And I don't know how that lingering framework worked for you, Jen. I'm curious about that, what that lingering space was, and how did it really unfold for you? Because it requires so much. One is the courage, right, to really speak to what is true for you. And first then comes the knowledge of what is true, like what is really true for you. Some people don't even know that what is true for them. I mean, I bet half the planet or maybe more are living lives like that. They've been told a story and they kind of follow that checklist of that course of their life and never really spend time in lingering, right? What doesn't feel right, the angst of a condition or a situation or relationship. The other thing that I will say is, when as a physician, and this is where narrative medicine comes in, as physicians, we are trained in a way to really focus on a disease and say, you have a heart condition. What are the checklist of things that you have? And let's fit that into a box that we can say is this condition based on the criteria of this. Basically, it's just a formula and pattern recognition. And it's really how we are trained. And I don't want to discount medicine to that broadly, but I think it's important to highlight this idea of, why is it not working? Why is it that physician patients aren't even able to connect to what is really the condition or really what's showing up, and why the patient is really there, and what's the effect that it has even on the healer? So there's that discussion, but
Yeah.
there's this idea of bringing in, and when I now talk to patients, it's really about asking the questions and focusing on the narrative of what is said, the words people choose, the voices that how they use, and where they how they really kind of, what's the word, disclose their themselves, right? It's subtle, and having that awareness of just observing and just watching and just letting somebody just kind of tell them their own story to you, and just starting with a simple prompt. And sometimes I'll just say, well, what is your struggle that you're having in your life right now? And that's it. And stopping and then letting that person just speak to, and they themselves, as they share to that struggle of the experience that they're having right now, will tell you the answer.
Yeah.
And in that conversation, there's a reveal to both the patient and the provider. There's no force of, this has to fit into this box, or the patient has to tell the story that the doctor needs to hear. How
I
did
love how
this
this is also an evolving process, like going to what, Jen, what you were saying is, the fiction and the reality. We're always kind of in relationship to that. Like it's a moment by moment relationship, right? I love how Alia kind of brings it all together and brings us into the room. But it's also, patients telling doctors what they want to hear or they think they should say to get the care they need. There's just so many fictions built into our relational dealings, right, in life. Where do you think, and I'm just going to kind of pivot a little bit, where do you think this tool or this perspective that you've developed has helped you to grow the most? Like, what has that really kind of supercharged in you that may have been kind of dormant before, but now is getting a chance to kind of really flourish? Because that's kind of one of the things that we see when we see people step into their transformation, is that some sort of hidden part of themselves that they may not have been aware of or went underdeveloped really just kind of took off. Would you be able to kind of locate that and maybe give us a story?
Yeah, it's I'd say it is the power of getting still, looking at all of the stories that I would linger, to use the word brought up earlier, or cling to, and then asking the question of their source. Are they true? I'm reminded of the work of Byron Katie. She has something called The Work, and it's 4 questions. And they're beautiful. It's a beautiful spirit of inquiry that you take to your beliefs, your narratives, the stories that you have always held dear. And in a gentle, gracious way, you can call those into question, be curious about them, and then perhaps unravel a few or let a few go that really didn't belong to you in the first place. So, what I'm realizing, and the shift for me has been doing that, getting quiet long enough, not clinging to the stories because that's where my certainty and safety seemed to lie. I was surrendered enough and could get quiet enough to ask questions of all of those stories and then dismantle or just lovingly release the ones that no longer serve.
Wow, love that. Lovingly release the ones that no longer serve. I can just see how the unraveling, right? And allowing that unraveling, having the trust to know that that is actually a process that you are supported in, right? By you, the people around you and kind of the experience itself. But I feel like there's an element of spirituality here that comes in when you brought in Byron Katie, right? Like it's just this, it's an affirmation of a core purpose. This is who I am, and I really want to know who I am, and I commit to knowing who I am. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Let's talk now into kind of how we work together, right? You showed up, and how would you describe your experience in ketamine treatments as you experienced them? I know the intention. We always talk about intention, and in the work, how did that initiate your treatment, and how did that change or evolve in the course of your treatment?
Initially, I just wanted to feel better and feel relief and return to me. What I perceived was normal me. What I realized was that I was never meant to return to normal me and exactly who I was prior. And that this was one more aspect of my growth and my journey, and that I was really meant to learn at the feet of this scenario and situation that I was in. So once I realized, okay, I can come here and something is going to come of this, and I let go of expectation because, that's a lot to come in to a setting and expect you as physicians to go, fix me, I'm so desperate, fix me, which I get why people would feel that way and beg for it. But I also just surrendered enough to go, okay, I feel safe here. I trust this process. I'm going to see how it unfolds. I know I will be better for it. I don't know where it will lead, and that's okay. It also, I think what it did was it created a little bit of enough of a peace, and you could probably speak to it from a physiological standpoint, whether it was a relaxation, a peace, less of a frenetic, scared energy, and I was less scared, so I could just calm down enough to do some of the work and the thinking and the processing that needed to be done. I felt like
Thanks for joining us on the Too Curious MD podcast. We hope today's episode inspired you to ask new questions and explore fresh perspectives. We challenge you to ask us those unasked questions that you're curious about in your medical practice, condition, health, and wellness.
If you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to subscribe, share it with somebody just as curious, and leave us a review. It helps us keep the curiosity alive. Post or comment with a question or curious inquiry that you have and seek to explore or learn with us. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.